Okay. Hi.
No, we understand. And
Come
appreciate
on
you-
in.
You let us know. Appreciate, get your materials.
It's hard to get here sometimes.
Well, I just had a meeting and we were like signing a contract and so it's gonna be like.
Okay,
Go ahead, God.
all right. On that note, it is 2:20 on February 21. This is a study session, scheduled study session. And I will start with a roll call. I'm Barb Noseworthy, the mayor, and we'll go around.
Melissa Youssef, Mayor Pro Tem.
Jessica Buell, city councillor.
Jose Madrigal, city manager.
Erin Harris, assistant city manager.
Bill Tuthill, interim city attorney.
Kim Baxter, Durango City Councilor.
Thank you. I'm going to read a land acknowledgement. This is my statement, does not reflect statements of individual council or councils as a whole. And I do this in front of every study session and city council meeting. For thousands of years, this region has been home to numerous people, bands, tribes, and nations. Each had their distinct culture, artistic expression, and community mores. In particular, this region was the ancestral home of the Nuchu, Dene, Pueblo, Hopi, multiple Apache bands, and various other tribes and Latinx people who used and stewarded this land. I recognize that indigenous peoples were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands by the US government, and it is important to recognize that the narrative of this region has mostly been told from the dominant perspective without recognition of those who came before me and who came before us and who to this day continue to thrive, create, and connect with this land. Thank you for your respect in my acknowledging this legacy. Thank you. So today we'll start with new business and then we'll go on to the items at hand. So I'm going to start with new business. Does anyone have any items that they would like to bring up for new business?
I don't have new business. I just wanted to bring up our agenda today. And I know that we all have some ideas and thoughts of what we might want to communicate today. But I just wanted to ask before we start, if there is any, if it might be wise to wait to have the first discussion when Olivier could be present. And I'll tell you why I'm thinking that. The reason why I think it might be effective is because I know Jessica and I will continue to work with Olivier for the next 2 years. And if he decides to rerun and gets reelected, then for Jessica, it could be 4 more years, right? Or if you.
And if I decide to rerun.
Right, if you just decide. So in any case, but for these next 2 years, what I think is the most productive outcome of this situation is if we can have a discussion on how to work together effectively and productively. And if we could have a discussion even with Olivier about some of the 25 different allegations that are on this agenda item, such as directing staff, and talk about that publicly, because it's much more effective than talking about it in email or over the Durango Herald. And it's the most effective way I see as a public body to work in the best interest of the community. So for me, I would prefer to have Olivier sitting there to have this discussion. Otherwise, all we're doing is talking at the microphone. But I recognize that I might be in the minority, so I wanted to bring that up.
I would like to just offer that. I have some opening remarks as well, and I would like to get them out
Yeah.
in that as to why and how we're here and why it's being done this way. So I do want to make certain that I will, whatever that is, I want to explain that to the public. I will also add that Olivier in a January 25th meeting told us that he could be at this meeting, but would have to leave at 16:30. So then it's no longer he could be at this meeting, but he had indicated he could be here. And could we make certain the meeting ended at 16:30? So I guess my one question is there any certainty that if it were delayed, that he would attend And so that's the question I have. Can we table that till I can actually talk about the opening remarks
Yes,
and then
of
come back
course,
to
of
that?
course.
Maybe have that as part of the
And I
discussion.
recognize this is a difficult
Okay.
conversation. So
If there's support for that, I'd like to explain
Mhm.
how and why we're here.
Before you do, I do have new business.
Good, and I have a clarification for next week's agenda.
Okay, do you want to do that first?
Well, next week's agenda calls for the chief of police to,
Next week?
yes, excuse me, 2 weeks,
Okay,
the
making
March.
sure.
I'm
I was
sorry,
like,
the
what
March.
agenda am I missing?
The March study session
Okay.
calls for the discussion regarding the municipal court procedures, and that is coming from the chief. I wanted to remind council that as part of the evaluation of the city, of the municipal judge, and then after we came out of executive session with that evaluation, we shared that we had wanted the municipal judge to share with us some of the best practices and maybe some suggested changes in some of the issues. These are not a combined meeting. It is still my understanding that Judge Law would be coming back either in April with the intent. So I need to seek clarification on that. But when I followed through the emails, it looked like this would be the chief presenting some of the concerns about procedures. And then at a later date, the judge would be coming to us. Is that a similar understanding of council, or do I need to, in between time, clarify that with the two parties?
I have no understanding about that item at this point, because I've seen no documentation.
Okay.
Definitely can provide some clarity to that. On that item, there was kind of two things working, I would say parallel. One was the council's discussion with the municipal court judge, and then the other one was just talking about our municipal court process, specifically as we were getting complaints along RUSA in regards to the appearance that the city or the police department wasn't doing anything. Yet we were absolutely doing things and writing citations, and it was really becoming a capacity issue with the court. And so what we were looking at doing was providing to the city council just some other opportunities or options that are out there that other municipal courts that are running, how their capacity works, some of the opportunities that they may have, and just get a feel from the council if that's something they would like us to continue to pursue further, as it would definitely need to be a budget discussion going into 2024, but begin just having what I would call an educational session on municipal courts, how they're structured, and how there might be some opportunities to increase the capacity of our court. So that was the guidance for that item. And that's why we had it on March 7th, but I think we had that up there at the very beginning of the year as a placeholder for that discussion.
Bill, you're on.
Just for your information, there have been a number of preliminary discussions involving the city attorney's office, the municipal prosecutors who we hire for outside. We have hired a second one recently to take over for the one who retired in the fall. Those discussions have involved the municipal court judges and the chief of police to talk about some of the bigger issues to help carry out the city council's I think desires and approaches to it, which fits in with what Jose was saying. There's a number of ways you can tackle this, but it requires probably rethinking a little bit the way things are currently done. But there have been some positive discussions taking place between all the parties who I think heard your message and are interested in figuring out how to accomplish it.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, with all the emails and phone calls we've been getting, especially around RUSA, I'd be up for some informational updates and just maybe answering better. And
So I will, with your guidance, I will reach out to Judge Law and make certain she's aware of this. And if she's prepared to also provide some comment at that meeting. But if you're actually going to suggest some funding requirements or possibilities, I think it's also important to have the municipal judge. It is her court, and so in that regard, so I do think it's important. So with your support, I'll reach out to the judge and with Jose's coordination and Bill's, make certain that we're all rowing in the right direction. Okay, That was my only item for the upcoming meeting. Kim, you had a meeting.
Yeah, well, so, and you just brought it up, all the emails and questions and comments and phone calls
Yeah.
that we're getting about the homeless encampments, not just on Rusa, but in other places. And I'm just wondering if we don't need to have even a deeper conversation about how we handle that. That doesn't have anything to do with the municipal court or with the police. It has to do with how as a city, because I'm concerned that when springtime comes, we're going to see more and more. And I don't know that we can solve the problems that we're having right now with citations being issued and no enforcement of the citations, et cetera, before springtime. And whether or not there's a good place to be able to designate, rather than having people camping and doing what humans do into our river and those kind of things. So I'm just wondering if maybe we don't need to push on that conversation again and see what we can have happen.
Is there any update? Because we had talked to Anne with the Coordinating Council on Homelessness about starting her own, or not her own, but starting what did we call it?
Yeah, managed camp or something like that.
No,
Their group to
yeah.
give us recommendations.
Yeah, to have more leg or more grit with that, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Following what I'm saying?
Well,
I'm not even following what I'm saying.
I asked Jose about that the other day. I said, have we heard from them? I mean, because as far as I know, we haven't heard a word from them as far as like advice about what to do and what next steps
Well,
might
yeah,
be.
I mean, that was only a little bit ago, and so like, if they're working through all those processes, like, I'm fine with that. I just didn't know if there was any progress there, because I feel like we've done this and we've hit our heads and stopped, and that was like this like potential forward progress. And so I don't want to like go back and like hit my head again if they're making progress. And so I don't know if.
Well, maybe that's the whole point of this conversation, is to say what's happening and
Yeah.
what might your recommendations be and when might we expect some request? And I know you mentioned that they had made a dollar request to the county for more staffing or something through the joint sales tax.
Yes, they request to myself and Chuck for joint sales tax funding for, I believe it was 2 staff members. Not quite familiar with it at this point. Chuck had just responded back that they would take it to their board for a recommendation. I think their first meeting in March, which is before ours. So was kind of waiting to see how their the Board of County Commissioners took it and then bring it to the council and get their guidance on that, because I think staffing was one of the things that we said we would be open to helping, but I definitely would like to have a little more information as to where that's going. One of the things we could do is just kind of as a guidance is maybe in a city operational update, just do a presentation of kind of where things stand in the communication with it. I know Luke is also very involved, and I haven't had a chance to talk with him in regards to what's the updated on the Coordinated Council for Homelessness, CCH is working on. So it might be a good starting point as an offer.
I'd actually like to be a little bit more proactive and reach out to them and ask them, like, where are you going? When can we expect? How, what's your time? Do you have timing on this? Is there anything that we can do to help support it? Are you hitting obstacles? Are there challenges that we don't know about that you're dealing with? And that's, why we haven't heard back. Or, I mean, I'd be more interested in being a little more proactive than just, and it's, an operational update of where they are. We're like, what are we doing? How are we going to make this, or what are we going to make happen? And how can we help with it?
I would imagine that would be part of the operational update, is us checking in and just seeing where they were with the process and what we could expect onto it. So I think that there is some of that information that could be placed into it, but it may not be what's the discussion maybe you're looking for. But we definitely could go out beforehand and as we would check with them and just see their status and their projects of what they're looking to work on or what maybe they're not working on, and kind of go from there as well.
I think it'll be difficult for the next council to be having this conversation again 6 months from now. So that's why I'm just trying to have some action being taken so that we have a direction to take and know where we're going.
I support an operational update, as soon as possible, just so we can, hopefully maybe at that beginning of March meeting would be great.
Yeah.
I support that as well.
And that might give us some guidance on where to go from there too.
Yeah.
Great.
The other note that I had was back when the Parks and Rec Board had their meeting and we were discussing the change to the boards and commissions organization. They
Yeah.
had kind of asked about, like, did we have any purpose that we wanted them to accomplish before the dissolution of that board? So, and of course, we can't do that by email. We have to have that conversation. So I wasn't certain if we thought we did, or if we wanted to have that conversation at some point, or their next meeting is March 15th. So we could have time to have that discussion at a study session prior to that meeting if we wanted to.
I would sure love staff input on that too, and pulling in of Turi to find out what the loose ends are. I don't know what agenda items they've been discussing. So you have attended a meeting or two.
Well, yeah, and I've reported back on it, and I sent you an email that said that they wanted you all to listen to the conversation that they had about the dissolution of the board. And then they also asked the question, like, so what should we be doing at our next couple of meetings?
But I have not had a chance to formulate, to go back
I know.
and to
I'm
do
just-
focus on
I'm
all of
just-
that. So I'm kind of looking at staff myself.
Well, and I'll like echo a little bit is that like if in terms of like, let's say the Creative Economy Commission, if they were looking for that same like guidance, I would look to Tommy and me to be like, okay, these are some loose ends that I feel like you would be successful in tying up. Or no, I think we're starting something new and we don't really have time to wrap it up. Does that make sense? And so I would think that is where that's my whole kind of take on it is it's hard for me to say, yes, get this done by this,
Well, they
date or-
specifically asked the question of council. And so as the liaison, I'm just
No, yeah.
transferring the
sure.
information to you and letting you know
Yeah.
what the question was.
I can interrupt. This is Turi. Just to let you know that the last meeting, the business items that were being discussed were strategic planning. We were trying to create a Parks and Rec advisory or strategic plan that married up with the city's plan. We were inventorying future needs assessment, how to best utilize that. Enhancements to an off-leash dog area, and then the OPDMD and e-bike policy is something that we might still need some information and help on from them.
So that your advice would just be go ahead with those conversations?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Yeah,
Okay, that's great.
Great.
Excellent. Thank
Anything
you.
else?
sounds good.
Those are my only two.
Okay, great. Now we'll move on to the next agenda item. And which is reviewing the evidence of Council Bosman's alleged repeated violations of code of conduct, discuss the violations and determine if a course of action is warranted.
But after you do your opening, can we make sure
Yeah,
that there might,
right. Other people might have something else to say.
Yeah,
Please.
yeah.
Oh, no. So what I will do is I've prepared some opening comments, which I've reviewed with both the city attorney and the city manager. I wanted to share those to kind of get to how and why we're here. Then I will open it up to council. If they have anything else to add, if they differ with my statements, they have not seen my statements. So, but I do want to kind of set the context for this meeting. And I will also acknowledge that I see two members of the Board of Ethics in the audience, and I appreciate your past participation and your interest in this. So please, I'm going to be as clear as possible, I'm probably going to read much of this. So the purpose of the Code of Conduct and the Code of Ethics has several definitions within it that you can find in the materials. And it said, but item 6 states that it's to provide a process by which city officials and the public may identify and resolve conflict and ethical issues. The use of the term may in item 6 indicates an option for a process to follow, but it is not a requirement to follow the process. Further, while an individual council may file a claim against another council, there is no process outlined in the code for how a council as a body may determine if filing an ethics code or conduct claim against a counselor is warranted. There is nothing in the code that lays out how we as a council might address that. Councilor Bosman's filed two ethics ethics or code of conduct claims against Counselor Baxter in 21 and 22. That is public knowledge. The allegations, the responses, and the findings, other than to indicate they were dismissed, have not been included in the document materials. The materials that have been included, emails and audio tapes in today's agenda packet, are in the public domain. Counselor Bosman's two previous claims against Counselor Baxter, both of which were dismissed by the Board of E, cost taxpayers $16,000 plus, not including staff and Board of Ethics Advisory Board members' time. On October 18th, the study session, there was a study session in which the Board of Ethics discussed their proposed code revisions. That meeting starts at about 1:15 and it's about a 55-minute meeting. I listened to it. I've listened to a lot of meetings that took place this past year in preparation for this meeting. At that time, the Board of Ethics Chair calls for separating conduct from ethics. The Ethics Board should handle ethics complaints, mainly because they're very specific, and the Board of Chair indicates the challenge is that would leave conduct side to you folks as a council if you had an issue with another council. From the agenda documentation, one of the recommendations of the Board of Ethics is to remove code of conduct from the Board of Ethics Review and Enforcement. From the approved minutes of that October 18th study session, council provided consensus of separating the code of conduct from the code of ethics. Counselor Bosmans did not attend this study session, though he was able to make the city council meeting that evening. I'm just going through the facts. The options for going into executive session are limited. Discussing a counselor's alleged repeated violation of the code of conduct is not an option for going into executive session. We have to do this in an open meeting. And if we're going to discuss it as a council, it has to be, we cannot have serial individual conversations. And I believe I'll stop there. With regard to Council Bosman's absence today, this meeting is a regular study session. The agenda has been out for months. We have known since October 17th that the intent was to have this brought up at this study session. His inability to attend today's meeting is inconsistent with what he conveyed to council on January 5th about this February 21 meeting. In an email dated January 5th, Council Bosman states, "I have a conflicting commitment that day and plan to change that, but would need to leave at 16:30 and will not be able to attend the regular meeting later that day. Can we consider fixing the study session ending time to 6:30? So the last communication I had, he was going to be at this meeting. With regard to an external mediator to conduct this meeting, any counselor had the option to see if council supported having an external mediator and could have raised that during new business at the February study session. All of council was present during that meeting and no counselor requested a mediator. Counselor Bosmans indicated on Facebook his intent to file a claim against a counselor and has filed a third claim to the Board of Ethics. Counselor Baxter, in response, asked Bill Tuttle in an email shared with all of council, could this post by Counselor Bosmans be considered an attempt to intimidate, threaten, or attack city council, or a form of retaliation against council for choosing to discuss Council Bosman's behavior? The specifics of this third claim, as with all ethics claims, are confidential and have not been shared with council as a whole. I'm going to go into the code of conduct, and please bear with me. The code of conduct does not lay out every description for what is or is not appropriate. Rather, the City of Durango Code of Conduct, Section 2203, represents a reasonable policy for guiding the conduct of city officials and defining acceptable conduct in dealing with each other and individuals who are outside city government. Here it is, the Code of Conduct. The code of conduct for city officials in conducting the city's business, city users and officials shall serve at all times to strive at all times to serve the best interests of the city, regardless of his or her personal interest. Perform duties with honesty, diligence, professionalism, impartiality, and integrity. Be prepared for each meeting, listen, and interact respectfully. Focus on the issue being discussed. Keep language and decorum of city officials on a professional level. Seek common ground before disagreements and differences. Refrain from personally attacking other city officials or residents, whether in writing or speech. This includes inflammatory or defaming language against any person or their persons. Once a decision is made, move on to the next point. Listen respectfully to opinions of others before offering a counterpoint. Avoid making rash judgments. Assume the best intentions of others. Speak for yourself, not others, and base your comments and decisions on your best judgment. Attend all meetings unless given excused absence prior to meeting. Accurately represent known facts in an issue involving the business, city business. Vote on all matters before the governing or advisory board, except when recusal is required in matters where a conflict of interest exists and as provided in other sections of this code. In all instances, an elected official or a board and commissioner member shall state his or her reasons for abstaining. Avoid appearances of impropriety or conflict by virtue of past relationships. Disclose any prior relationships that would have constituted a substantial interest within 3 years of the matter pending before the Board of Condition. Second part, in conducting the city's business, city officers shall act with the boundaries of their authority as defined by the city code and honor the chain of command, refraining from directing subordinate personnel, coordinate communication with staff through the city manager's office. Direct correspondence with staff shall remain at the department head level. As appropriate, speak to each other, not to the audience, and speak with one voice once a decision is made and when providing direction to staff. Let me end by saying that this is not a trial. This is a discussion for council to have about another counselor's behavior. We don't have the option to appear in an executive session. There is nothing in the code that describes this process or how it should play out. It is about a discussion about alleged violations and what may appear to be a pattern of repeated behavior. This possible pattern of repeated behavior has consequences for staff. It takes up time, it takes up resources, has consequences for this council and for the way we function as a body. That is why we are here today, to look at this. It is not a trial. It is to look at this and determine if there is issues that would require some kind of action. Now, before we go to yours, Melissa, I'd like to ask if any counselor has something to add to how I describe the situation.
Well done. Very well done.
All right. So I would like to point out that Councilor Brasman is missing. He had indicated that he could be here. My big concern, as I have stated, and you will see in the documents, is that in the past year that Councilor Brasman's missed the Board of Ethics discussion and 5 other study council sessions. So I do not have an assurance that if we were to postpone, there would be attendance. The missing 6 out of 23 meetings is 26% of the meetings being missed, just study sessions. So I do want to raise that as a fact.
What do you propose as our next?
I would like to hear what people, how they want to respond to Melissa's suggestion.
And just to reiterate.
Yeah.
Just to reiterate for you, is just, I think that it would be so effective to be able to communicate, just like you said, we have to do it in public. To be able to have a conversation directly with Olivier sitting at the table about the impact of some of what we have experienced and the impact to the community, to us as a council, and to staff. And I think that for me, it feels important to have his voice at the table so that he has an opportunity to respond and to listen to us directly.
Okay, I've written down a few things, just like thoughts. And if you humor me a little bit, it'll get to my point. Because there's part of me that agrees with Melissa in terms of Melissa and I and Olivier are going to be serving for another 2 years with 2 other counselors. And in the end, and I think for bringing this up too, you guys bringing this up in the end, like that's what you want to see, is you want to see us succeed, right? And the 5 new counselors succeed going forward in some manner that is more productive than what we have experienced in the last couple of years. And so I think if we can get to that point, then this has been successful. Does that make sense? Whether or not whatever happens out of today. So I saw this quote. It says, "There's a truth about public service that is often unspoken and rarely understood, that the role of our elected officials is about much more than balancing budgets and ensuring the delivery of essential services." And that's J.B. Pritzker. And I think when we talk about like the impact that we have and like working together and how much of a better impact that can be, it goes so far beyond this. And so I'm just gonna brief story real quick, and because I feel that this tension is much bigger than even us a little bit. I was raised by my grandparents. Since I was a little girl, my grandpa and I would sit down with his pamphlets. I don't know if you remember those, like voting pamphlets, every election. And we would talk about the benefits and negatives and impacts every single election. When I turned, my grandparents are Republican. When I turned 18, I registered as a Democrat. And for the next 8 years while he was alive, we sat together with our pamphlets and talked about the upcoming election. And we talked about what we agreed on. We talked about what we didn't agree on. We talked about issues. We talked about impacts. And then when we voted, often different, we had dinner and we laughed and we loved each other. I currently have numerous friends that are registered Republicans, and we sit there and have great discussions about like life and our community and our nation. And I can, at the end of it, have a beer with them. I watched the last presidential election with a Republican, swear on my life, did. And it was awesome and great. And like, I don't know, like, especially here, like as a city council, like I don't know when it became when we disagree with each other, like we have to hate each other. And especially here on council, like it's not about being Republican and Democrat, it's about loving Durango. That is why I honestly believe that is why all of us are here, even Councilor Bosman's as well, even though he's like not here, but I believe like it's not for the pay. It's not for like, it's because we love Durango. And I don't understand like why, because I disagree with, it doesn't mean I'm not educated. It doesn't mean I haven't prepared. It doesn't mean that I don't care. And it doesn't mean that I should, because I disagree with you, it doesn't mean that I should have ethics complaints or open records requests filed against me. It doesn't mean that we throw temper tantrums and become a victim by twisting truths and trying to stir up controversy or drama because I don't get my way. As elected officials and public servants, we should advocate our position, absolutely, stand behind what we believe and argue for it. And I mean, there's plenty of times that Barbara and I haven't agreed, or Kim and I haven't agreed, and Olivier and I haven't agreed, and Melissa and I haven't agreed, but that doesn't mean like that we should do those things that have been done on this council. And it's super unfortunate. And when the vote goes the other way, and because sometimes it does, and we don't get our way, at that point we fall in the direction with the body and try to make that direction the best possible. And I think that that's what we're missing here, is that when the vote isn't going someone's way, it now becomes a controversial, dramatic Facebook post or an ethics complaint, and that is not where it should go. Not to make false claims on Facebook, spread half-truths, misinformation, slam our staff in public with the same question repeatedly because you're not getting your way and the answer you want. In the past years, the current staff can remember, I've talked to numerous staff, no sitting councilor has filed numerous open records requests on another. No sitting councilor has wasted as much staff time and money filing numerous ethics complaints and open records requests. And I will not go this route. And I want to make that very clear to everyone here. Like, this is not who I am. That is not what I believe in, and it's not what I stand for. If I have a problem with someone, right, like, and I will 100, and I can say this, like, Barbara and I had a big disagreement at one point in time, and I called her. And we sat down and we talked about it and we worked through it. And now I value her friendship and the professional relationship we have. And that's who I am and what I stand behind and what I always do. And while we can sit here and not nitpick, because some of them are serious, go through these 23 allegations, that's not what I want to do. I want to be on a team that cares about this community, and I firmly believe that hopefully we can be that team. And I hope we can move forward and all get on board and working together and stop the ethics complaints, stop the lawsuits, stop the open records requests that are wasting staff time, taxpayer money, and causing a rift in this council. This kind of behavior has no positive outcome for us and hasn't. And I like firmly stand behind like, whatever the outcome of this is, I hope that that's what we get, because that's all I want.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very well. There you go.
Councillor Baxter, any opening thoughts?
Yes. So I agree with you. I think that the best outcome would be to have a functioning council that functions well with each other, and where one Councillor Bosman specifically in this situation isn't filing ethics complaints, is sitting down and talking with other councilors rather than using a legal process to have that conversation. And I want to make clear those conversations, those actual personal conversations never occurred, nor were they ever requested. And as you know, when we had team building, they were never brought up then either. So I want to make that clear. And my biggest concern is about the future. And this is why I brought this up. This isn't an individual or a personal issue. It's a city council issue. And the conduct that's been occurring significantly, as all of you have pointed out, affects the ability of council and staff to do their jobs. Valuable time is spent dealing with misinformation, false information, and misleading information. Consultants and contractors have been subjected to inappropriate comments that have been made that have been very derogatory and suggesting conflicts of interest. This behavior negatively affects our relationships with the county commissioners, with members of the business community, and with city residents. And so my biggest concern is that if inappropriate, unprofessional conduct continues unchecked, unacknowledged, and unaddressed, then what keeps other or future counselors or staff from exhibiting the same behaviors? Because if we have, as we've all signed the code of conduct, we've all agreed to abide by it, but if there are no consequences for not doing so, then why should we have a code of conduct at all? And why would anyone abide by it? That's my biggest concern. If we don't address a situation that's been going on and it's been persistent, repeated, ongoing behavior that I think needs to be addressed. I'm not suggesting how it be addressed, but I think if there are no consequences to this kind of behavior, then I don't know, chaos will ensue, something like that. I just don't want to see that. And so my concern is for the future. My concern is from every day from here forward. And what you as future counselors, because you will be mayor pro tem coming up, how that affects your ability to be a good counselor and the 3 new counselors coming on, and how it affects staff. or two new counselors coming on and how it affects staff. And that's my concern.
And I would like to say the best possible outcome is a commitment to behavior that abides by the code of conduct, that many of the things that you laid out and you as well, that allows, that is respectful of staff and staff's time, and allows us and honors, once a decision's made, moves on. As people are attending meetings, those are a good part of the job, and that there is a commitment to removing the dysfunction and actually becoming a high-performing team. Now, that's my ideal outcome for any meeting. And I do agree that I also want to say that the issues have been going on for some time. And so I appreciate your comment about having Counselor Bosman's here. I guess my first question would be, will he commit to show up at the next study session and participate in a respectful and collegial manner?
So I know, help me remember this, and I don't know, Bill, maybe you can help too. So I know a year ago or so, we had kind of tried to work towards a working agreement. And you guys had tried to do a working agreement with the previous council as well. And I am wondering if, now that we have like maybe some specific things, because you talk about attendance, like what happens if one of my kids falls ill, or what happens if one of my businesses, takes off and I have to like, you know what I mean? Like, there's like, you talk about attendance, like I feel like there should be, some, like, it was so funny when I ran a previous counselor that was talking to me about running, was like, you can miss 2 meetings in a year or something like that. Like, and I was like, okay, like as long as I plan, like I can manage that, no big deal. I don't know where that number came from for him. Like if he must have just pulled it, because it's nowhere. I've looked everywhere. It's nowhere anywhere. He must have just, someone told him and someone told him and that sort of thing. But if there was something to the effect of that, or, like, so that way counselors do know when they're coming on board, like that's a good expectation. Like, what is the expectation? And obviously, if an emergency comes up, I feel like we're all genuinely care. But what
That
about,
is a discussion item after this.
well, yeah,
They do blend, but it is.
yeah, it does blend. But that's so.
That's a good point.
We talk about what are we getting out of this? Like, I don't want to talk. I don't want to sit here and line item everything and which one we think is valid or not valid.
Right. I don't think
And
that's it.
so I can honestly be done with this conversation and talk about bigger pictures, like, working agreements. How can we get there? I would like the new council to be involved in that, to be honest, not that like maybe we start it with you guys because you have been here and you kind of have some good ideas, but then we finish it and sign it with the new council. Like, I think that
100%.
that's for me anyways. And so anyways, those are just some of them.
Can I turn to you, because I know you have in your material, the working agreement that we kind of started.
Yeah.
And let me also say, while she's preparing her notes on the attendance, I actually went to that because I was trying to figure out why Counselor Bosman's had so many questions that we didn't have, that had, and we were getting frustrated because they'd already been covered. And so I went and looked, and sure enough, they miss a study session where we're talking, 2 study sessions where we're talking about, this is in 2021, the Best Western, and then not being up to speed, missing a study session where we're talking about the Board of Ethics and how that should happen, missing a study session where we're talking about rate increases. So I know we all will miss things, and that's life. We have parents, we have kids, we have holidays, but there's a difference between missing an occasionally and a pattern of missing more than any other counselor combined in any kind of combination. And so I think, and without any explanation of why you're not going to be there. So I think we go into this knowing it used to be every Tuesday was booked. And now it's at 2. So we do go into it. There are exceptions, totally understand that. But when we miss the meeting, I will say, it, what is the expectation to be caught up so that other future meetings are not circular about things that we've already heard? I guess that's my, but I wanted to give you time to talk about the working agreement.
Well, we made an agreement at the October 7th team building about, excuse me, I didn't.
No, sorry.
About the atmosphere of the council meetings, and I was just looking over this while we were talking about it too. I think it speaks very, very well to everything that we're all looking at. So there were, I think, 16 points. I'm not counting them. They're not numbered, but be present, be positive, be collaborative, allow for civil discord. In other words, allow for disagreements. And then we say next to able to disagree. Curious, professional, listening, be allowed to make up your own mind, understand and believe that everyone is doing a good job, understand people are well-intentioned, recognize that everyone is doing the best they can, collegial atmosphere to get things done, polite, straightforward, and continuous improvement. And I'm not sure where else you could go with an agreement. I think this pretty much, I mean, other than the fact that it doesn't say follow the code of conduct, and there's more like,
We were all present though, and we all agreed to that.
yes. So personally, I think that, and I will point out that October 7th was a Thursday. We had this discussion with council. All of us agreed to this. And the following Monday, Councilor Bosman's filed an ethics complaint without bringing up a single item that was in his ethics complaint during this meeting. I'm not certain that just having an agreement about things without a set of consequences or ramifications, if it doesn't happen, is like, why even bother having it if you're not going to do something about it when people don't?
Well, and that's what I'm trying to say is like, those things are all great. So there's been times where I can say that I haven't been as professional as I would like up there, that I get frustrated or a little fiery at times, right? Like, and that's not saying that I'm not well-intentioned or I'm not doing, does that make sense? But I feel like there's certain things like, we should come to an agreement before you file an open records request. You come to against another counselor, you come to the counselor and express your concern or whatever. Or before you file an ethics complaint, you go through a mediation with that counselor trying to resolve it.
So you want to be more specific.
More specific, because those things, they're so subjective a little
Yes,
bit.
they
and,
are.
And I think that we all learn different. And knowing Counselor Bosman's in the capacity I do, I feel like he's very like X, Y, and Z, like A plus B equals C, right? And so I feel like if we're specific with things and we agree to them with him and our new counselors, then we can hopefully be on a path with forward where some of these things don't happen again, or we have the tools to solve them. Does that make sense? I don't know.
I think the specifics is really important.
Yeah, because I
agree
think
with
that
you.
that's
I think
too-
specifics are very,
I mean,
Mhm.
it's great things, but they're too, lovey-dovey. Sorry.
no.
So I return to the question that you asked. We're talking in general now about how can a council monitor individual counselor behavior, if I'm hearing it, and have consequences for it, for not adhering to that behavior. I guess the question, and I'm not certain that, let me just say, I'm not certain that I want to go through each one of these, but what I will say is I see a pattern. I see a repeated pattern, and that concerns me because, and I think it should concern the future council, because if not addressed, that is a problem. Because when I look at the documentation, it's anyone could be a individual, any one of us could have violated the code. Let me say that. I have said things that I wish I'd worded differently or whatnot. I think those are typical one-offs. What I'm seeing is it's possible that anything could have been possibly a violation. One in its own right isn't the issue. Is there a pattern? And I'm not, trying to do, is there a pattern of behavior here? And that if so, those behaviors take a lot of time for people to answer emails and to collect data and to get things requests to what you're saying. And how does that possible pattern stop? That's my question.
Yeah, how can we become more productive? Like, how can we solve this? Because,
the question.
yeah, and I do want Counselor Bosman's here for this
Yeah, I do
discussion.
too.
And with, and honestly, I do believe with a facilitator, because I don't think any of us, I don't know, maybe I can be, I don't know, have the ability to stay open-minded, just because of, like, I'm upset and I'm hurt. I am 100% that someone would file an open records request on me and me fret and worry about it and read through hundreds of pages of emails that I sent questioning if I did anything wrong. Like, that is not wasting an entire weekend. It's not okay. And for him not to say, hey, Jessica, I'm concerned that you were talking about this. Did you do this? And I could be like, oh my God, did I? No, I don't think so. Right. Like, that's what I would do. And instead, and then if you're still concerned, then sure, file an open, here, you can have my email. I actually don't even care. Like, go through it all. Like, that's what I want to avoid, that kind of stress. I mean, I'm on watching my kid play hockey and I'm talking to Bill on the phone, like trying to like figure it out, and it's not okay, And so I want to avoid that for me, for all counselors. And so because of that experience, I don't know if I can stay like personal, and I would assume you couldn't if I was in your position.
I have to say that it is, I don't even know how to explain this, but there's no validity to anything that's occurred as far as the code of conduct complaints that Counselor Bosman's has filed, and they've all been dismissed. And I'm kind of like, I guess I feel like I'm the target because I was mayor when he first came on, and the mayor, as you know, manages the meetings, and he wasn't particularly happy with being managed. And so I feel that there was a problem that occurred there based upon positions, not that started based upon positions. And maybe it became personal later for him. But for me as the mayor, it was incredibly frustrating listening and watching to the way he spoke to staff and to consultants and trying to manage that and not having any tools to manage it with. So that was incredibly difficult. And Counselor Bosman's has never acknowledged that the ethics complaints were dismissed. We've never had that conversation. And so for me, I'm kind of like, it's not personal for me. It's about this council and the next council and the council after it. And about how councils and counselors and staff realize that the code of conduct is a serious thing. And there's a reason why we have it. And that doing things behavior-wise that do not comply with that, and your conduct does not comply with that, has consequences. And that's important for me, because I think people will have the same experience in the future, maybe 20 years in the future, where there's the same kind of a pattern between counselors. And what do you do about it? And I just don't want to see that be okay. So
I'd like to comment on something you said. I'd like to actually remind council that I listened to the October 18th study session, and at the very end, had been talking about how do we do this? And Dave Smith, it was very end, I could actually almost pull out the minutes. I just saw it right just there. Said that normally if you want to interject and say point of order or, point of information, normally, this council might do that and the mayor would then kind of help moderate that, or the mayor can have some influence through the gavel to say, hey, wait a minute. But this was his quote, but in this case, and he was speaking to Counselor Baxter, you were the target. And so as a mayor, you can't.
It makes it very difficult.
So it's not just your feeling. That was actually an opinion of one of the board members on the ethics committee, and you can listen to it at the very end of the meeting. I'd like to hear, Jose, many of these emails have involved you and work. Your thoughts on how to get to a more productive functioning council, the impact these have had, this experience on you or staff, and how to get to a more productive functioning council.
Well, I think that the beginning of the discussion and the ways that the council has already kind of talked about conducive ways and roles definitely helps. I think it's a really good footing and a really great first step. I like the part of having collaboration first before doing a open record request or an ethics or code of conduct complaint. As a staff, it's always difficult because, we work for the body, which is the majority, but individually, I think every staff member wants to have good relationships with council members and is definitely striving to do their best. And when there is division like this, it gets uncomfortable. I mean, having staff seeing that there's an open record request on one counselor on another, uncomfortable. When you hear in the paper that there's been ethics complaints against a counselor against another counselor, uncomfortable. And how do you work with getting to where everyone can have a successful win, yet knowing that there's some very deep divisions at times in it just makes it difficult, especially in some of the things that you've gone through. And I know that in there was emails that were included of mine that were to the council and had things, and I'll let those stand on their own. But I do think that to get to a high performing organization, and where I think we all want to be, the more that we can engage and have collaboration, doesn't mean that necessarily we always will agree, but that it's a safe place to find out if there's a part that there's not a place where we disagree, that we can find other options to go through. And it doesn't have to seem to always be one way or the other, and which usually happens when you have for division. So I think from a staff perspective, I am, excited to hear what a new rules would be, especially with some of those steps that would require having that collaboration and having that talk first, I think would really definitely help. And looking forward to the ability to see what that would look like, because it's important for this council, for future councils, that we continue to move forward, that, we should be making sure that everything we're doing is what's right for the community of Durango. Understanding that people are always going to have opinions on that for sure, but that should always be our main point of really going for the community. And anything that gets us to that part, I think will definitely be very much welcomed from the staff perspective.
Completely agree with that.
Yes.
So
I
go ahead.
I did, well, I had one more thing that I wanted to mention because I realized I forgot. And you brought it up. You mentioned Counselor Bosman's post on February 10th about intending to file a complaint to the Board of Ethics regarding a city councilor.
I didn't bring that up.
I did. I put it in my.
Somebody
comments.
did.
Right, no, I'm not gonna
Um,
block on his Facebook.
I think that because a specific city councilor was not mentioned in this post, that cast aspersions across every city councilor. I'm concerned because this came after we decided to have a conversation about Councilor Bosman's behavior. And I will say, to me, this felt like there was some attempts at intimidation here and attempts to change what we were doing. And I'm very uncomfortable with that in many ways. But it also bothers me that each and every one of us have been accused of deliberately trying to mislead the public and using deceitful tactics, among other things. And that's also a significant concern. I think to your point about filing core requests and other things, this kind of an attack on all counselors and on council as a body is unacceptable. And it concerns me so that I believe that if you want to have a positive, collaborative, councils in the future, there has to be something that addresses this type of behavior also.
And I mean, yes, I mean, you hope going forward that, like I said, that we can agree and still respect each other and not say things like that about each other. But there's also, right, like he can say whatever he wants about me and I can say whatever, and I can come back and say what I need to. I mean, and people that watch and know me and know, like they know, you know what I mean? That's who I have to believe and trust in. I mean, I had an old city councilor call me when he missed the Mason Center meeting saying, does he ever show up to meetings? Like people see that. And when he comes up for reelection, if he wants to be reelected, people know, like, and so you kind of have to let some things like go. Do I think that there should be repercussion? Like, do I think we should show up for meetings? Yes. Do I think we should not direct staff? Yes. Do I think we should, there's some easy wins I feel like that we could have if we have a working agreement that maybe we can all work forward and sign with like repercussions on it and not just like the feel good, be kind and love each other kind of stuff. But there's also freedom of speech and you can't say that.
Oh, I
you can't be a city
absolutely
councilor.
agree.
No, I know.
I
mean, yes,
absolutely
it's
agree with
awful.
freedom
I
of
hate
speech.
when that was screenshotted and sent to me. I was like, it's hurtful. Like that's because I would never. I think that's what's hurtful is that no matter how much I disagree with Councilor Bosman's, I would never say those things about him. So go ahead.
I was just wanting to, I've been a little bit quiet because again, I really do
Yeah.
think that I wish he was here to listen to that comment,
100%.
to hear that it was hurtful for you, to hear the impacts that it has on the community and staff, on trust and how we operate as a body. And so, but at the same time, I knew that with our history of what we've been through together, the five of us, that likely you might have wanted to be heard. And so, and I think that that's fair too, that you also have the right to be heard. And in a completely transparent and open environment, you have the right to speak as well, like you're saying. So I was interested in hearing what you guys had to bring to the table today, but I will reiterate that my hope is for the productivity of the community that we can in May, hopefully, with a new team of 5 counselors, have this conversation of a productive work environment and how we most effectively work together and outline some of this. Hopefully with all 5 counselors at the table. I don't think we should have it if they're not.
And I would like to suggest, I would be willing to have this meeting if Councillor Bosman's would agree to it next week, or not next week at the next session, because I think it's important for him to hear from me how this has impacted me as a mayor, how it has impacted the previous mayor. I think it's important because you're not in that role. So I'm more than willing, if he will commit to coming, to have a discussion of behavior and how it impacts the body as a whole. And you could also possibly include consequences for those behaviors. Because I think it's very important to hear how, 2 claims against a mayor, a sitting mayor, and a 3rd claim against a counselor.
And also, quite frankly, the expense to the community.
Very expensive.
So that is undeniable.
So
Some people don't agree with that. It seems expensive. I mean, maybe, I don't know.
$16,000 for 2 claims that were made to be groundless. We can determine what we want, not to mention the time. So is there support for having a meeting determining that Councilor Bosman's will attend this meeting? And we have an opportunity to actually share, because then when you're in May, maybe the air will be clearer, but I do believe that, to your point, I also had the opportunity to be heard of how this impacted me, and I would want him to hear that.
Like, I don't want to redo this meeting all over again.
No.
I would want like a facilitator, and I would want to start working on maybe some potential working agreement points that we feel like would solve the issues that we've had. And we don't sign it, but the next council comes in and maybe revises it and then signs it. Like,
That's
I'd
a
want
good
some
idea.
productivity out of it. And obviously Counselor Bosman's would have to be there. Otherwise, then I say, we do it
Yeah,
with the new
and-
council, and if he comes, he comes, and if he doesn't, he doesn't.
And on that topic, I think the agenda subject line needs to just be productively
Council.
working together.
Yeah, like, yeah, council
That is, you know.
agreements and, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So I would support that as well.
So do you have support for as soon as it can be arranged meeting?
Absolutely.
Next study session works for me. I think, I mean, I was looking at it to see if I thought we had time. We have 2 1-hour discussions. Do you think, staff, that we could begin with it or have it on at this next meeting on the 7th of March?
Or could we have the municipal court discussion and make certain that the judge is also in sync, because they may not be at the following study session?
We'd have to take a look. It's always hard to shuffle things
Yeah.
around and
Yeah,
not know what that might do for items that were in the other agenda meetings that we might have to go through, but it's also then something about mediator and or facilitator. Is there one in mind? And I mean, and that's the part where we go through, because that's a whole other part of a task that I'm not sure.
you know, if we really need one, it's just the opportunity to have really, quite frank, public discussions. So glad it's not an executive session. I want to have them public. I want to be able to share publicly the impact that it has when he does present, for example, if it, in my opinion, misleading information. If it was misleading information, what that does, how that impacts the community. If he's sharing that publicly, the implications of that. I just want to talk about things like that. So I don't know if I necessarily need a facilitator. He may not agree, but I would like to be able to state publicly that whether we agree or not, whether, you know, we can agree to disagree. What I'm asking you to do is listen to the impact that it has on others.
But I also agree to like something that we can work towards in the future so like this stuff doesn't happen. And so that's what I want someone to productively lead us to, like a working agreement that can, like, we can learn, like we can use.
What if
Does that
we
make
have a
sense?
study session on March 7th with the current sitting council to talk about what
What has happened?
has happened and how people are feeling about it, and then what if we go to try to go to a potential retreat with the new sitting council in May, facilitated?
That's a good idea.
That gives us time. And then the new council team can together, who will be working together for 2 years, sort out what this looks like. And we will try very hard, I think, at that point to make it so that all 5
guess-
counselors can attend.
Yes, no, I love that. And yeah, I want all new 5 counselors to agree to it. And I love, the retreat facilitator, great. I just want next meeting, like what is different about it than today?
Only that Olivier is here.
That's it. So it's the same meeting?
Well, no, I
me.
think it'll be a
Well,
little bit,
different agenda.
yeah,
It just, unless you think it's not, I'm all ears if you think that that's not a good use of time.
I just like, what do we accomplish?
Well, I just wanted him here today to hear all this as well, but maybe he'll hear it anyway.
he could
So you
listen.
might have a good point.
So there's a couple options. He could certainly listen to this. That's what I would do if I missed a meeting. But I think where we're coming from is understand, to understand a different view, you kind of have to hear it, right? And so so where I'm going with you is, people can say, oh, well, this isn't personal, but it is very personal. People spend their time, it's in the paper about them. There's all these things. And so your consequences are taken at your actions are taken at a personal level. And so what I think is if you can start to hear how others felt, and it's a two-way street, then maybe there's some understanding that can come out of it. And so it may not be that we talk about the exact same things, but we will say, we do have the opportunity to say, filing an ethics claim without having a conversation, we didn't see a conversation between two parties. We didn't see it. You claimed you had it, but we didn't see it. Kim says that it didn't happen. How does that impact all of us? These are the impacts it has on us. It makes us maybe less trusting or this or that. And so I think those are the things that there's value in hearing how behaviors think. And it could be, and I felt this way and this and this. And so I don't anticipate a kumbaya session, but I do anticipate a making how this has impacted us. And I would welcome Jose also saying, this is what it means when we have to,
My concern is if there's not something different, he's not gonna show up.
we're giving him the
Okay,
opportunity.
that's fine. And I just wanted.
We're giving him the opportunity.
So then.
But I think you
Next
bring-
agenda items just might go early because I don't like, if he's not here, we skip the agenda item.
Yeah, there's no reason to have the conversation again, I don't think, unless you can come up with as council as a whole comes up with a recommended action.
You have a really good point there.
Like, it's just like, you know what I'm saying?
We're doing.
Yeah,
I don't
we've
think.
been heard. And
Can you speak now, your thoughts?
Sure.
I'm sure that you'll listen, because then I think what you're bringing up is a good point. Maybe we move on and meet in May.
unless there's something like, hey, during this meeting, when we're talking about our concerns, we're gonna bring up, and would you sign a working agreement that says, I will have a mediated session with a counselor before I file ethics complaint? Yes, no, we can work, right? If there's something productive and different out of a meeting, I am down. I read, I want this better. This has been awful. And so, but I just don't want to beat my head against the wall and have him not show up again and then just be defeated.
No, I think you bring up a really good point. So thank you for bringing that up.
So I would like to say then, a couple of things. I mean, I want to say it now. And I'm speaking on behalf, I had a conversation with an advisory board member from the Multimodal Advisory Board. And, I served on that board with that person for 2 years, and I said, hey, how's it going? Open question. How's the meeting going? And then I heard that, their view was that this quote was staff were being beaten up on. And I have a concern with that. And this has been shared through Jose. Jose followed up, and the staff member felt that they were treated unprofessionally. So I went back and listened to 3 multimodal meetings. And 2-hour meetings, wrote down every time I felt that there was that Counselor and I have him here, Counselor Bosman spoke. And I have concerns with what took place in that meeting. If I were a staff member, I could see that I would feel that I was not treated professionally, and I would be demoralized. But that's not something I might have prepared, but if I'm saying it now, I would be demoralized. I would also say that in that meeting, and I didn't prepare it in advance because we could get some materials, but some come in. I listened to it, and 12 times Counselor Bosman talked about directing wanting a recommendation and needing a recommendation, a strong recommendation. I have the quotes. And then saying, and the council as a staff member asking, are you directing? And he said, no, I'm not telling you what to put in the recommendation. And then the next conversation was, what should be in the recommendation? What I think you should put in the recommendation. It should look like this. How about if you put this in the recommendation? I mean, so I think there's a level of direction that you, not only on workforce, but how do we relate as liaisons? That concerns me. How do we make certain we're not dominating the conversation? Because I found that in one of the meetings, it seemed to be totally driven by council. So those are things that concern me. And I would also say that from my experience, if a counselor, when I have raised a question about Counselor Bosman's behavior, he accuses me of attacking him. And I'm not attacking him. I am raising a question about a pattern of behavior that troubles me. And if we can't, as adults, talk about these things and as a council talk about them, there's a problem there. But I will also say that normally I would say, hey, let's have coffee and let's talk about this. But because of the actions that I have seen, I don't trust having a private conversation with Counselor Bosman's. So the only way I can have that conversation is let's talk about this because of what the actions that he has taken against other counselors, against Counselor Baxter, make me not feel comfortable or not, it's not comfort, trusting to be able to speak candidly about something that may concern me and how it affects the council. So those are, in my mind, as a mayor, far-reaching issues to be accused of attacking someone if you're just raising a question about their behavior.
And so
Or-
again, like I look at that and it's like, okay, how can we solve this issue? Because I don't think it's just probably Counselor Bosman's that has ever overstepped in
Sure.
a board and commission meeting, right?
Right.
And so as a whole council, so that's like what I'm more worried about. Yes. Again, I'm upset. There's been lots of things that I don't agree with, but like, how can we make sure that future counselors that come on understand this is our bounds and this is where we're supposed to stay. And these are our expectations. And then if it comes up where someone says that, then we can bring it up. Hey, in this meeting, you said this, we agreed to this in our working agreement. This is your warning or whatever the action items we have in our working agreement and go forward. Like I want to focus more on the behavior that any one of us could do and future counselors, years and years and years. And so it doesn't turn to this anymore. Like that's what I really want to focus on.
And I agree with you. I agree with you. I would say among the council, there is not a pattern among any of the other individual counselors of this kind of behavior. So that's,
But
that is-
could I at one point accidentally like say something wrong? Yeah, absolutely. And so
isn't it repeated?
no, I know it's not repeated, but again, like I feel like if we have clear boundaries and expectations and repercussions and steps to take, then it's easier than just like going through this list. And I feel like another one of these meetings would be like, let's beat up on Olivia again. Like, that's not what I want. That's not.
And that's not what
productive.
this is.
Yeah, well, no, I know, but I'm just saying like, if we did it again, that's all I'm saying.
I understand your point.
So this speaks a lot to what that conversation we had with the Board of Ethics back in October about their recommendation to split the code of conduct out of the Board of Ethics purview. And the conversation that we had with them was, how do we as a council do that then? And would they make recommendations for the process that council might go through about code of conduct issues? And I think that speaks a lot to it. And maybe that's in this conversation we're thinking about having, maybe that's something we request.
Yes.
I don't know if they've had a chance to meet about it and talk about it and contemplate those suggestions, but that might be one way to help it be within the realm of being effective.
Yes. I support that.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree that, it's not just, so I appreciate you asking me what else would you like to say?
Yes.
Because I did feel very strongly that staff need to be treated respectfully.
100%.
And I also want to recognize that any one of us can do something. I don't see patterns among anyone else. So I think that having the prescribed, as you said, the prescribed consequences for your behavior, if you do this, and an agreement to those consequences.
Not even consequences.
Yeah,
all
that
the
means that's the
time,
right word.
but like steps for resolution, right? Like that's like, if this happens, okay, here are your steps.
That we agreed to.
Yes, that we all agree to. So now
Yeah,
let's do it.
That's better.
Yeah.
Better description. Do I, Jose, would you like to add anything? And can I
Ramble enough.
can I try to summarize what I heard and ask if there's agreement? But I'm going to give you a chance to speak on anything.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Bill.
can tell you that.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. First, let me give my observation as a relative newcomer here. I've heard every one of you, and quite frankly, I have had coffee with Olivier and his invitation. All expressed the same desire, which is you're here to serve the citizens of Durango. You won't always see what is best in their service the same way that each other will. There will be different opinions and approaches, but that's what brought you all here. And you all start off assuming good intent. It hasn't always been executed as well. I can tell you that the Board of Ethics has been working hard at making proposed changes to the code of conduct, the code of ethics, how the Board of Ethics functions, some of the definitional terms. And they took your October meeting seriously and have been hard at work making those changes in conjunction first with Tony and Suzanne in the city attorney's office, and doing a lot of work on their own. And they're a talented group of people who are well qualified for the position you have appointed them to. I'm also hearing some very positive suggestions that there is a benefit to a facilitator. I've heard at least 3 of you say that might help. Because it depersonalizes it a little bit, and it allows a neutral party to say, can you see how this might affect your behavior? Because I'm sure Olivier would tell you that some of the things he's heard you say about him
Absolutely.
hurt and upset him, and that you probably didn't talk to him first. I can tell you that the rules of civil procedure have a standing rule that applies to every motion but a motion to dismiss the case. And that requires you to consult with opposing counsel before filing it to see if you can reach agreement on something. So you file it without a certification. You talked to opposing counsel. I don't care if it's a request for an extension of time or to, additional discovery or anything. You don't talk to them, judge is going to deny it. It's part of the rules.
Part of the
And I
process.
think your suggestion on that, it makes a lot of sense. I've heard some positive suggestions about having some more specific identifiable criteria. Okay, what does it mean to direct staff? What's your expectation for how council members interact with the boards and commissions where they're liaisons to? But I think you're talk first, act second before filing an open records request, before
remember
filing an
that.
ethics complaint, before writing a letter to the editor. Probably is those are good suggestions.
Posting on Facebook.
And
Yeah.
it's the sort of thing that, yeah, everyone has a free speech right, but sometimes it's better to bite your tongue and figure out how to, as they put it, and you've expressed it, collaborate. So my sense is you have a common objective, and that's to figure out how to function, even when you disagree about what the issue may be underlying it. And the more you talk about how to accomplish that, the better it is. So.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. I'd like to talk about what I heard as next steps, but I also want to clarify something. Jessica, you talked about the value of having a facilitator there to keep it going. And Kim, you talked about working with the Board of Ethics, and I wasn't quite clear on that. Working with the Board of Ethics to either provide some guidelines or possible process for how we as a council address code of conduct issues.
Well, in our meeting, I think I asked, but we had all council talked about it. Would they be willing to provide us with their ideas about how that might work for council to manage the code of conduct? I don't know how to be more, I can't be more specific, but that was kind of the request was, would you help us with this?
Okay, so I'm looking at the Board of Council. I'm not expecting an answer. And Bill, you're still the liaison to the Board of Ethics, the Board of Ethics.
Yes, I have
Still-
not been heavily involved with that. I have read their proposed changes. They are fairly extensive. They've tried to be comprehensive. They are thoughtful, and they are mindful of the thoughts that you expressed in October. So I think they're.
There were 2 requests.
Okay.
So were 2 things that were going to happen, I believe. One was the revision of the code of conduct and code of ethics. And the other was, given that we understood that they thought the code of conduct should be pulled out of that and be in council's space, how might we best do that? So I think there were 2 things. actually.
And they have tackled that. I probably sent mixed messages to them when I was on a phone Zoom call with them a week or so ago. Because, you know, one of the things I do when I sit up there is try to read the tea leaves. And I wasn't sure exactly where you guys were coming with the tea leaves as to whether you wanted to engage in self-discipline or whether you wanted a neutral outside group like the Board of Ethics to engage in it. I think that their message was, that they heard was, you'd like the elected officials to be held to a code of conduct, but the Board of Ethics wouldn't be the ones who hold them to it.
And that was their
And
recommendation.
I think that they're prepared, unless they, you know, took my bad advice. I think they're probably prepared to do that because those are some of the changes that they were making.
Excellent.
So may I be clear? Is there support from council to approach the Board of Ethics about the possibility of outlining it may not be possible, but about the possibility of outlining a process whereby council would manage any code of conduct complaints, because that's the separation.
Well, were we hearing what their recommendations are that they've already been preparing?
Or hearing what they've already prepared, yeah.
Yeah.
Very
I don't-
soon.
They're
yeah,
prepared to come back with
Yeah, yeah,
an ordinance change
Yes,
that incorporates their thoughts.
yeah, great.
on it.
So-
And
when they're
then you
ready.
don't have to approve it or disapprove it. You can talk about it and
Yeah.
say, okay, well, I like this, this and that. You know, it's like a
Right.
lot of ordinance
And-
changes.
Would there be is there, because we're also in the midst of a third ethics claim, would they be prepared to do that at a March 7th study session?
Here, I will look at the members of the Board of
Well,
Ethics.
Yeah, how about we just like wait until they approach
Yeah,
Bill, let them talk to Bill and then
Okay.
Bill will.
Yeah,
put it on the
I'm just
agenda
saying
when
that
they're ready.
because this is a significant discussion that we've had today. And I do think they have been working on it, and anything that can inform how you go forward as a new council, I think is beneficial, rather than waiting until, oh, we're gonna meet 3 months from now and we'll have it for you.
Yeah, but if they like,
Right.
well, I agree with that, and if they know like new council's coming on in May and we'd like some sort of direction by then, potentially maybe they could, you know, give us a little advice. I don't know.
I will look to have a conversation with the chair of the Board of Ethics, and then
I can do
depending on that conversation, we could work it into the study session. Is there support for that?
Yeah, when they're ready to come to us, we will work it into the study session.
There's support for that?
Where you mentioned the same study session that you're gonna try to have a facilitated discussion.
No,
It can
the
be-
We are
facilitated,
not doing
that's
that.
why I'm reminding
No.
that
No, we're not doing this.
the facilitated discussion, that was the second summary, would take place after the new board, the new counselors are elected,
Yes.
probably sometime in May. I don't know if it would be a study session or a special council meeting. You would have to coordinate on that. So, but I am trying to get some clarity around this code of conduct operation with this council, because we have been in the throes of it for over a year.
Right. But from what I heard, and you know, I think after hearing what Counselor Buell said, I do agree with her that repeating this
No.
meeting next study session is not warranted.
No.
So we don't need to do that.
I think we're in agreement.
Yeah,
there.
I didn't come with a preconceived idea of what today would look
Yeah.
like.
Right.
I just came wanting to, because council had agreed that we wanted to have this conversation, and I thought it was very important. And just to express that my concern is about the future
Yes.
and how things work. And so I had no preconceived ideas about what was going to happen or what choices would get made or what direction we would take.
Do we feel like we've wrapped up this conversation?
You know where you're going?
And you feel like you have clear direction?
Yep, thank you.
I would like to see if we could just move into the discussion of attendance. And if you're willing to, and then we might actually be done earlier, if you're comfortable with that. Rather than taking a break. Okay. Because that puts us back, we're a little bit, yeah. I can't see that.
Because we have attendance and pay.
10 to 4.
And pay, yeah, we've got those two. Okay.
Yeah, it's 10 to 4.
So is there a need for a break or shall we just keep going and try to have a longer break?
Can we have a
I'm gonna
3-minute
take- yeah,
break?
Exactly. I'm just
3
gonna take a
minutes?
real
3
quick.
minute
3
break.
minutes sounds great.
I just need to
Perfect.
take a quick.
So we're
look,
gonna
and I
come
hate to
back. I
disrupt
can't see the clock. It
the
looks,
team.
10 to 4.
so we're gonna come back at 5:04,
7 of 4.
7:04. Thank you. Sorry. Hi. How are you? Good to see you. I'm pulling us back together. Bye, Kathleen.
Thank you.
So the next item is a discussion of attendance. And I want to, in case someone's just starting to listen, I'm going to repeat myself a bit, so please bear with me.
Yeah. Sorry.
No. I too thought that there was an attendance requirement when I came on council. Let me start by that. And also at the time, I also know that, you weren't, if you couldn't be there in person on a city council meeting, you weren't participating. You couldn't phone in, you could phone in and listen, but you couldn't even vote in that case. But you could call in on a study session. And so, like I said, I was finding myself frustrated because we would be at a meeting and we would be talking about something that we had talked about in a study session or at a previous city council meeting. And I was concerned in this case, and I will name it, I was concerned that Councillor Bosman's had so many questions that the rest of council didn't seem to have. And so I wanted to figure out, well, what's happening here? And that's when I went back through the minutes, which are available to everyone. And I started actually the beginning of the book, which was June 15th to December 14th of 2021. And I also, when I started thinking about it, I wanted to see, okay, is there a pattern of not, if you miss a meeting, does it take longer to get up to speed in the next meeting? And so I looked for topics, and then I thought about different conversations, and this is where I'm going, and I'm going to actually make some suggestions as well.
Oh, good.
So like I said earlier, we had two meetings on August 3rd and November 16th on the Best Western. And that was a topic that, if you'll recall, it took a lot of, there was like Councillor Bosman didn't seem to understand the way the financing was going to work and what we were going to be doing and the process for it. But he missed two study sessions on that topic in the previous year, 2021. And then, and there were others, the trash and recycling, the AFCR, it used to be called the CAFR, but it's the ACFR. And so then I thought, well, to me, we are elected to do a job. The charter calls that we will have two city council meetings on the first and third meeting. And the assumption is that you will attend those meetings. And then we have the study sessions, which have been moved to the same day. So I also understand that if you're out of town, if you're sick, you don't just miss one meeting, you miss both those days. So that also impacts attendance as well. But what I saw, and so I thought, well, just to be fair, let's look at everyone's attendance, which was interesting. And I want to say that I recognize kids graduate from college, parents are in the hospital, I could be sick, it's my brother's 70th birthday. I mean, I get all those things and things come up. The question I have several is, how does that impact staff when a council member isn't in attendance? And if you miss a meeting, what should you do to get yourself up to speed? That's one question. It was, and in our obligation to each other, and it is part of that obligation to come and be prepared. And another question is, perhaps, as I'm told other city councils do, perhaps you actually even have to announce that you're miss a meeting in a public forum and seek approval from your colleagues. And so that may be something. And then I guess I want to just say, I believe to do our job, we have to be present as a group, as a body. And when any one person is missing, that impacts our ability to do our job. But I also want to caveat that I've missed meetings, and I know that we all will. The question is, is it excessive? When does it become excessive? Or when does it become so much that you're not, that the body as a whole is affected? And that I don't have an answer on.
Do you know, I know, because you've worked for other municipalities before, do they have attendance requirements in their charter?
I can't think of any I've been to who have attendance requirements. It's an expectation. There are places where you have to have an excused absence. So that is generally the purview of the rest of council to say, hey, we know you're here to, attend your daughter's wedding. And we're out of town for a week, and that's going to be deemed excused. This one actually ties into the next subject of your discussion here, and that's council pay. You get to set under your ordinances, your council pay. There are a fair number of cities and municipalities who only pay you for meetings you come to. That tends to promote attendance.
That's funny.
And so saying it's a way that some cities do it, is you simply don't get paid if you didn't come to the meeting. Now, and as the mayor points out, it's only in recent years that most municipalities have permitted remote attendance.
Yeah.
For years, they didn't. I mean, you didn't come, you didn't get to vote. Even if you could say, I could teleconference, I could call in, but I'll in St. Louis on business. They simply had a rule that said you weren't physically present, you couldn't do it. And then the pandemic came along and everybody changed their rules. So now you can participate even if you're sick, because you don't have to worry about everybody from home. So you
Yeah.
changed your rules, you adopted an ordinance like a lot of people did that said, we'll allow video participation instead. So that's what other cities do. And you do have, I mean, the only caveat is your charter does say you miss 4 consecutive meetings. It's seats deemed vacant. So you decide to go to Tahiti for a month and a half.
Dang it.
Yeah.
You could zoom in.
If we can
But now you can
increase-
zoom in.
Right,
So
that's right.
It's,
That's right.
but you could always change that rule too. That's yours to make.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
but a lot of places did not allow people to participate by teleconference. Or, back before we knew the term Zoom as anything other than the sound you made.
I mean, I appreciate the Zoom aspect in terms of like illness or, and work travel for me. And it helps, I think, people in my situation continue to run for city council, because if something did come up with work or my kids are traveling for hockey, I've done that before. We're in a tournament and I zoomed in from Charleston from a hockey tournament before, and to be on the meeting. And so it does, if that wasn't an option, it would prevent me from running, probably, even though I have been in attendance more often. That's what's hard, is that it's like, I feel like as long, like, it takes someone not showing their best effort to have to create rules and policies like this, because there's in no circumstance would I ever think that, like, I'd have to change the rule or policy for future anyways.
One of the things I love about Zoom, having been in both
Mhm.
arenas, ET,
Yeah.
yes, is that it allows for higher participation
Yeah.
from all 5 counselors, which makes for
Right.
better discussions, better votes, better decisions. And I also think it promotes participation by residents. I think many times we get a lot of good participation here, but we also get a lot of good participation on Zoom. So I love that aspect, that it creates better participation, so better things happen. So I think that's great.
And I would like to clarify, even though I looked at the special sessions and like to go into executive sessions and then other special meetings, that's everything from Board of Ethics, Board of commissions, interviews and things like that. Those aren't scheduled. And so, they're not part of the schedule. And if you're going to be gone on a holiday, and some people will say, hey, go without me because I don't want to slow down the process. And so I get that. The main concern I have are study sessions and city council meetings. I'm not concerned with the others as much, because those aren't scheduled. These are scheduled a year in advance.
I
You
can
went
tell you
through
the
all
one
the
from an
meetings.
attorney's perspective,
Yeah.
one I don't like Zoom participation are executive sessions
Right.
because you just don't know who else is really in the room. You know, if you're at a hotel room, you may have two kids and a spouse. You know, if you can hear the TV on in the background, you sort of suspect either council member is not paying attention and they're watching a game, or there's somebody else there. And so for those of us who closed out executive sessions to who's limited to be there, not a big fan of that. So if you're thinking of changing it, you might want to think about how you feel about executive sessions, please.
Well, you could always be recording it on your phone surreptitiously too and sending
yes.
it off to people. So I
I'm
don't.
just saying that
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
the attorneys don't like
Like that.
executive
Right,
sessions.
right.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So.
Okay, so what are we wanting to get out of this?
Well, one of the things I might just suggest for council to think about in the future is if you're gonna miss a meeting, a commitment to listening to that meeting. You
Well, you
know,
might put this into your conversation.
Exactly,
again in
that's
the
what I was
future.
Yeah.
So attendance, or if you want to allow, have to have conversation about does someone not attend? And then following up and making sure that they listen to the meeting or whatever. Yeah, that might be something for you guys to have that conversation.
and I also believe that the
Agreed.
public needs to know when people councils aren't there. And if there's a pattern of missing a significant number of meetings, the public deserves to know that. And so I think putting in some kind of request in a future meeting that just says, hey, and I'll use my example. It's my brother's 70th birthday. I'm gonna miss a meeting because I'm gonna be out of internet connection. I hope you'll understand. I don't do this very often. I mean, I think some obligation to each other to publicly put it in that I'm gonna miss this meeting and I hope you'll understand.
Yeah.
And I also want to say, I recognize I didn't look at liaison meetings. I didn't look at, because we have so much, but these are the two I see that the city the constituents expect of us.
Yeah.
So those would be my two recommendations.
We'll definitely follow up on that. and
Public
make-
acknowledgement of missing meetings, and then what was the other one?
That if you're gonna, when you miss a meeting,
listen
you
to
commit
meetings,
to
yeah.
listening to
Okay.
the audio. So that when it's discussed,
Right.
And then I guess the other thing I would also add, because I've seen this, is there's also been offers from staff when counselors have missed meetings. You missed this, I'm happy to go over it with you.
Yeah.
And I don't believe there's been any follow-up on that. So again, here's an offer of a staff trying to make certain you understand this issues. And so if listening isn't enough, then a one-on-one with the staff.
Yeah.
I just think it would be make for more productivity and less concern that we've already covered this. Why don't you understand it?
I think it's an important ad
Mhm.
when we do that. Yeah.
And you-
It's their conversation.
Yeah.
so, and again, I think it's it's job performance, right? So. Thank you. Now we have, talking about jobs and performances,
Right.
we have pay.
Yes, Mayor and Council, Devin Schmidt has a presentation to just to kind of bring back to you that was included in the packet. Just some of the research that we did on counselors' pay within the state of Colorado, and I'll have Devin come do that presentation.
Devin, thank you for collecting all this information. It was really informative.
Yes, no problem. It was actually Devin Schmidt, Budget and Strategic Plan Officer. City of Durango is actually a partnership with the clerk's office. And so let me pull that presentation up. Apologies for not having it open. Okay.
What a stunning photo.
Yeah.
Right.
and I do have, I
There's
did
pictures
print out
tomorrow.
copies of each counselor for you individually if you'd like those. They were shared via email prior.
Yeah, I've got mine. so-
I have mine.
I don't have this part on the back though.
Oh, I don't have that part in the back. Oh, this is me. That's. Cheers.
Ah,
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, so as part of council's request, the staff worked on looking at different municipalities in the state of Colorado and then what benefits council receives. And so we wanted to look at this holistically. So you can see it ranges anywhere from snacks to full benefits with a pay, and there is very different pay as we look at the different cities that are on here. We also included the population size for each one of these cities and towns as a point of reference, with the assumption that there's a larger population, maybe there's either more council or more just more work associated with that. So you can see.
Devin, can we minimize that, the study session sign so that we can see all of the pays?
There it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. Yep, so, oops. Wrong direction. Sorry about that. So as council can see, we did look at various cities, and so Durango's highlighted in there with green. Represents what the mayor receives, what council receives, and then what full benefits are provided to council, and kind of what that total compensation looks like. From there, we wanted to provide council with kind of an average with city populations that are closer to Durango. And so, as you can see, Greenwood Village has a higher pay for mayor and council, but only health insurance is offered to the mayor. You can see Durango is next there with full benefits, with the same as employees, which includes all of council. And then Canyon City there that has the no benefits, but compensation for council, and just those different city populations there.
Devin, were all the comparisons done on the city council form of government ones? None were elected mayors?
Yes, when Faye and I were working on this, we made sure that it was a city manager form of government, so it wasn't a strong mayor.
Perfect. Thank you.
And so we just wanted to provide some kind of quick, easy data. And then in addition, if we look at the total compensations of this current council, you can see the average compensation is $28,959 because this is looking at all benefits that the city provided. So that's looking at that total compensation statement. And that ranges from 11,300 to 42,648, just depending on the benefits that are selected and for that.
That's a
Right,
big
'cause-
range.
Well, like families are higher benefit costs, that kind of thing. Yeah. And that's, except for the fact that the mayor's salary is a little bit higher, that would be the only difference.
Right.
Okay.
Right, exactly. So looking at that, kind of an average, it gives a good, kind of a good picture of what that total compensation looks like for council as a body. And so, just wanted to have council, have the opportunity to have the discussion and direction as requested by council regarding the pay. And if I need to go back to any of these slides, I'm happy to, but it's just a short information packet for you all.
Thank you.
So thank you.
I think it was Melissa's.
I was gonna say it was
request, yeah.
Melissa's request, and
Mhm.
so I wanted to just ask Melissa if you wanted to talk about what brought, remind us or
Sure.
the public why you raised this question a couple of weeks ago, I think.
Well, we've had the conversation a couple times as a council. This is obviously not anything that would have an impact on me, any of us who I think vote for this, just for the public record. This is for we wouldn't be able to vote on us if it would have any impact on us. So this would not be something of a, for us, but this is for future counselors. When I talk to people and when I talk to, potential future candidates, I just wish that I could say, that it's, at the level it is right now, with the exception of the fact that, and I have enjoyed the benefits, I will admit, but I do know some candidates who do not need those benefit packages, that they have it from their spouses. And so that it's not something that they will benefit from. And though, so for them, then it becomes a very, almost a volunteer position. And I just, after serving for 6 years, it's my belief that the level of the amount of work that we do today, I'm not asking counselors to do any more time than they currently do, but the level of work that they do for today, 2 times a month meeting, from 2 o'clock to approximately 10, studying for 4 to 5 hours before that, the number of phone calls that were available to, 24/7, the level of expectation that the community really expects us to hold. And, quite frankly, with all that we have going on with the, just for me, I feel like that I'd like to see future counselors potentially be able to look at this as, maybe they could do this position and one other part-time position and still be sustainable. I think Jack, thank you. Jack Turner wrote a really good op-ed. I was just rereading it. I thought he had some very, very valid points, but the most relevant one to me was his, and this has kind of changed my perspective. I really, myself, I'd like to see counselors paid more, but I've also received actually quite a bit of negative feedback against that. I've had quite a bit of people contact me, say, I have no support for that. And so then it's like, okay, well, you know what? You get what you pay for. And you're either going to get people who can manage it. Jessica, I think you're an anomaly, and I don't know how you manage 2 children, 2 jobs. You show up and you're well prepared. It takes its toll. And for me, it's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice that you could be doing something else, and you've chosen to dedicate your time and effort to the city, which I truly appreciate. For a lot of us, we can do it because we have the free time. We might be retired. Christian asked me if it would impact our quality of life. No, it doesn't impact our quality of life, but we have decided. So for many,
I know about that.
in a negative
Well,
way.
it doesn't know. I mean, I think the time commitment does impact our quality.
It does, because we make a sacrifice, but I feel honestly somewhat frustrated by the conversation, because I'd like to see counselors paid more. It won't impact me. I'd like to see counselors paid more, but I've gotten pushback from it. So I'm kind of like, okay, fine. Then actually, I turn to what Jack Turner is saying, and he's saying, let the citizens decide. Let the citizens decide if counselors are paid fairly. He's saying a very good point, which he said, it's a quaint, I'm going to quote Jack, it's a quaint notion of our city fathers and mothers volunteering a few hours a week to guide local government. It's outdated and impractical for a municipality our size and services. And I kind of agree with that. And he's saying, let's change our tradition that favors electing the wealthy, retirees, or folks with lots of free time, and fair compensation would facilitate candidates and counselors that are representative of our population. I have to believe that could be true. And if it is, I feel like they should be paid, and so that's just my position. But like I said, it doesn't impact me. So it's not a fight that I want to go. If I have a bunch of people saying, I'll never support that, I'll never do that, I'm like, okay, fine. Keep it as it is,
Other thoughts?
it's just, it kind of honestly even frustrates me, because I feel like, one more thing, the thought that as I felt is, I feel like over the next decade for the city of Durango, which outlasts all of us, really important decisions need to be made for our community. Very important decisions about Durango Mesa Park, La Posta Road, affordable housing, connectivity of our of our Animas River Trail. All of those things are so important. What our downtown looks like. And these are very valuable, very important decisions to me that our community will benefit from greatly. And I appreciate those who make the time and energy to make those decisions very much. And I'd like to see them a little bit more fairly compensated for just that work. To me,
Okay.
and I feel kind of passionate
I
about
can
it.
tell the
as you can tell.
passion.
Yeah.
You can tell. I appreciate the passion, actually, Melissa.
Because,
I
I
think
bet I
it's-
do. I've served for 6 years at this level and I just don't know. I feel like it's fair for those who come behind me to have to continue to do that.
So
Other thoughts?
I'll just say, I think that there's a level of like public service, like
Sure.
but I feel, but I feel, and that is why I'm here. The big skew from 11,000 to 41,000 in our pay is because I don't take health insurance from the city. I have it from somewhere else. And so I'm the one that's making $11,000 total compensation out of all of it, so, which is, but I did it because I had two people begging me to run for city council and convincing me over and over and over again. But also I feel like there's that level of maybe public service that isn't, people aren't feeling quite the same, and there's this divisiveness that's happening, and people are like, no way am I getting involved in anything political. I will say it would be more appealing for someone like me to do, even if you just said the thriving livable wage, which is
1970.
$19.48.
I think it's
$19.
1970.
Oh, the one that I just pulled up
Yeah.
under living, whatever. Anyways,
just don't-
Yeah, yeah.
doesn't even matter.
Just call it 20.
Yeah, but like at 20 hours a week, which I feel like is doable, and on average, probably some weeks are more and some weeks are less, what I do. Like I would stand behind something that where you're making it's $20,000 a year basically. And then with another part-time job, and then you maybe get some more qualified people. That is what I would like, I think it's fair to be compensated that, but again, it doesn't affect me at all. I ran regardless of it. You hope that there's people that love our community and see those important decisions coming up and want to make sure that there is a good voice that represents Durango the way that, that someone that loves it anyways.
Yep.
That would do it for that. So yeah, I don't have much else to say.
So I'm looking at this and my total compensation is $32,000 a year. And I think I think maybe where we might go with this is the idea, to your point, if you don't need the insurance, is there a way we can do a cafeteria kind of plan where your salary is your salary, but if you need insurance, then that part of your salary goes to insurance or something like that. I mean, maybe that's the way to do it. So it's equal for all counselors, except for the mayor, of course, has that little bump because there's more responsibility. That's one way that I have kind of thought about it. And that does preserve that kind of ability to have that second job, which usually part-time jobs don't provide health insurance. And so the ability to have the health insurance or the ability to take the dollars depending on your need. And I think that there are a lot of people in the community who, even though they would love to give of their time and their energy, they absolutely could not afford to do so if there wasn't some benefit to it, like the insurance. And, you're saying $20,000 a year, we're looking at $30,000 a year. Is that fair? Going to the other extreme of where it's like paid the way our county commissioners are, which is about $100,000 a year. What concerns me about that is that then that's their full-time job and all their income. And so I am concerned not about our county commissioners as people, but about that structure, that then you're running for a job. So the choices you make during your career are impacted by wanting to get reelected again. And I have concerns about that. So I would hate to see that be the situation for our city councilors. But I do like the idea of providing for some diversity, multi-generational Clearly participation, I know we have that on this council. It's not always the case. And diversity in like the lives that people lead. I see too much similarity in counselors, like what they do for a living. I don't mean like real estate or something like that, but I mean, like they run in their own businesses, which is great. I applaud you, but that means that there's flexibility there. Not everybody can run their own business. So how do we do that? And I see this, but I love, Jack had mentioned this before COVID. And then when COVID hit, he backed off of it because he didn't think it was a good time and it wasn't appropriate. I would love to see a citizens-led initiative that brings that question to council for council to maybe figure out, define a little bit more of the details, and then it is by our constituents, not by the council,
Yeah.
but by our constituents.
I agree. I think that's a great idea. Too. Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
And I know we
go
haven't
ahead.
talked yet,
That's okay.
but I just want to completely agree with you about the fact that we do not want this to be a structure of the La Plata County.
No.
I once I was at a meeting in the offices of La Plata County and I saw Julie Westendorf and it was after the holidays and I said, did you have a good holiday? And she's like, well, I had Christmas Day and New Year's Day off. I was like, oh, that's hard.
It's a full-time job.
It's a full-time job. And clearly we know that we are not full-time
Right.
and we are not intended to be. And so I kind of also liked your idea of just a living, thriving wage, maybe.
So I would like to say, first of all, I'm pseudo retired. When Christian asked me, well, how many days did you work? I thought, gosh, I think I worked 5 in the past year and a half. But that's
not a council.
not a council. At my other consulting business.
Just want to be clear.
So,
about that.
yeah, no, I've been there at council. So, so I would like to start by saying first of all, I didn't know insurance was provided to council. I didn't know that was part of the package when I ran. And then when I signed up and they told me what the payment was, I thought that was what I was supposed to pay every week, not what I was supposed to pay every month. And so I've always been an advocate that this benefits package, not an advocate, but made the statement that this benefits package is a platinum package. And I know staff is looking to come up with some changes. So that will change. When that changes, it will change this. But I also have always felt that in my own view, right now, the only people who seem to be able to run are independently wealthy, retired, or have their own business. I mean, that is who we base flexible hours. That is who we've been who has led this for 2 decades almost. And that concerns me because I think there are so many people in this community that could bring their experience and their expertise to bear on council, but they can't afford it. To your point, they can't afford. I said, they're doing the Durango Tango. And so I firmly, I don't want it to be so high that people treat it like a job. I was saying that I thought livable wage was 1970. So even if you round it to 20,
Yeah.
I think that would allow people to say, okay, I'm going to work my part-time job on the weekend and I can do this work here, recognizing that. And I don't even say it's 20 hours a week. I say it's 80 hours a month because they're intense times. When we have those meetings, they're intense on the Tuesday, first and third meetings. So I would like to see a salary increase. I know we'll be changing it. I think your idea of a menu could be attractive, which says you have this pot of money. If you need insurance for yourself, you can spend this and the rest will come in salary. Or,
Or take it as salary.
or take it as salary. I mean, so here's your pot. Maybe you only insure yourself, I don't know how it would go, but here's the pot of money. You get your choice of how you take it. I think that would also be a little equitable. I would love to see a citizens initiative. I think there's 2 ways. I mean, you can take it to a vote, but I thought a citizens initiative could also be brought before council then to have to make a vote. So, I mean, there's one thing, council would vote on it or the community would vote on it.
Oh, maybe we ask Bill. Do you know that?
Yeah.
We
you
can
have
pass
a
an
citizen-
ordinance.
You can have a citizens initiative
That passes an ordinance.
that they basically pass it and then you have a period of time in which to either adopt it or reject it.
Does it have to be during an election though, right?
No,
No,
Oh, it doesn't.
no.
no.
We had.
With
a
the 9R
citizens- We had a
initiative.
couple of different citizens.
They just have to get so many signatures supporting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to come to a vote. It doesn't have to be during an election.
Do an
cycle.
ordinance or not,
But if you don't pass it, then you have to put it on the ballot.
Right.
Okay, how many, do you have any idea how many signatures they would
I
need to
would
do
have
to get that?
Check the,
Remember?
the law.
But that
It's
is
a
a really good
percentage-
idea.
But, you know, then we could,
percentage of the number of people.
it's
who
typically-
voted.
People get in the last election,
Good idea.
with their granite
It's
card,
typically either 10 or 15%, but
it's,
I
yeah.
haven't looked at that in a while.
But so what I would like to see is a citizens initiative that brings it, recognizing, and again, to your opening comments, no current council would benefit from this. I don't even know if it happened too soon, if an elected council would benefit from it, because you have to vote. So anybody who votes for it can't benefit
Yeah.
from it
They
is
can't
my,
benefit during their current term. of
Current term,
office.
yeah.
yeah, during your
Or
current.
Charter and under state law.
Right, I think that's how it goes. So I would like to see a possibility of raising it. I would like to explore if a menu option, if presenting it as, here's your bucket of money. You know, whatever that is, you can take it in salary, or you can take it in salary, a combination of salary and benefits. You know, I don't think that complicates it, but I think it widens the ability of people, because some people may need insurance, and
Yeah,
that's a
totally.
huge benefit. to them.
Insurance.
And that's
Yeah.
a, so I think it just broadens it. And my goal would be, this would allow us to have a more diverse council, both from age, economic background, ethnicity, experience. I just think future councils would benefit from that.
Or the community. would
And the
benefit.
community would benefit from it. So I don't, that we've all spoken. So now is there a consensus around direction to staff?
Well, it's a citizens initiative. There's no direction to staff.
Right.
Oh, good point. So some citizen would need to then step
Well,
forward.
I think I think that's where he's gonna go with
Yeah, I think
this.
he's like listening and then.
Yeah,
going-
I'm sure that it's-
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Could we all email Jack and say, listen to the meeting? You've got some work to do.
Yeah. I would be thrilled if we could raise.
So we're all suggesting that we're hopeful
Yeah.
that this becomes a citizen initiative.
Yeah.
And then if I understand the process correctly, Bill, that citizen issue, let's say they get 1,000 signatures, just as an example. Which is a lot. That would be a lot. I don't know how many they have to get, but let's just say they got a lot of signatures and they got the sufficient amount to bring it to council.
Well,
They have to have draft language.
Jack is suggesting that
You
they,
can't just put a question of,
So we have to
Right.
they
create
could
the,
put, you can always put
they
an advisory question on the ballot, should city council salary be raised to $20,000? But citizens, an initiative would have to have an ordinance that goes with it.
Jack is suggesting a non-binding initiative that allows staff and council to figure out that language and then to be able to take it forward from there.
But if they come forward for an ordinance, we can just approve it and,
Yes,
Yeah.
but.
or council could say, no, we want it to go to election to the whole population.
Right.
It's a
Oh, right.
thing that we
With
went
9R.
through with 9R where we were like, do we put it on the ballot?
right,
Or do we just approve it and change our land use development code?
okay. I
I-
like
I
that
like it.
direction.
And it is not, if you think about it, even if it were a doubling of the salary, you would be talking about $50,000 change. Currently, you may change, you've got, right now, your benefits are an assumed cost.
I'm assuming that you are about right. That's what I think
Yeah.
the increase would be.
Yeah, if it-
So it's not like we're trying to get this to where counselors are making $50,000.
No, it's like-
income.
No,
That, just to be very clear,
No, if you were
it
making-
would be it would be looking at a thriving wage.
Yeah. I think so. Well, I mean, I guess we'll see what the citizens initiative brings to us.
Right.
so.
yeah.
Okay.
The thriving wage, I do want to complicate. So I guess you could say,
With your menu, yeah.
you could take 20,000 in salary. Because right now, I mean, my bit, like to say, I didn't expect it. My salary, my insurance is calculated at close to $23,000 right there.
Yeah, and so that's 32, that's the same with mine. It's
Okay.
$32,000 for salary and insurance together, and I pay 4,000 for my insurance benefit. So, you know, we're not going to set on numbers today, but it's
No,
the concept.
It's the
of-
concept.
Yeah,
The charter provides that for the initiative, 15% of the registered electors have to be registered electors, not less than 15% of the total vote cast in the last municipal election. So we can ask.
You know what the votes were?
15% of the vote cast.
5,000.
It's about,
So you need to, the signature, you have to get valid signatures from 15% of the total vote cast in the last municipal election.
okay.
So however many people voted 2 years ago.
November.
15%.
a municipal election.
And it can be started by any group of 5 or more registered electors. The city can commence an initiative. But only the people who are in the group can circulate the petitions.
That's a big deal. But we're saying, as a council, if I understand it
For
correctly,
support.
that we support a citizens initiative.
Yes.
Yes.
And we're not saying we want to put anything on the ballot until we receive something from the citizens, if there's citizen support.
Yes.
I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah, the citizens.
If the citizens want to bring it to us, we'll review it.
And then
Okay,
you've
good.
got, I think it says 30 days, to either pass it or put it on the ballot.
Right. I think that's good.
Yeah, I'm pleased.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll see.
Let's check. I wish I could see the time.
4:36.
Thank you. It's 4:36. Have we covered everything on our agenda? I believe so. We are ahead of schedule, but I will announce that it is Aaron's birthday and Sarah's birthday. So I don't know if you're gonna have cake for us to eat.
Are you going to pickleball?
Yeah, cookies.
Play some pickleball, birthday pickleball?
Oh, happy birthday.
To both of them.
Happy
Yes, Happy
birthday.
birthday.
So we will re-adjourn at 5:30.
Perfect.
Thank you all for, let me say, what a productive discussion today, right? I would like to say, never an easy conversation, but I appreciate the thought that everyone brought to the table to have in this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm sending Jack a quick email. We discussed your letter
We discussed
Yeah.
your letter.
and the possibility.
Great job.
For